Morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is choice. So we believe we have choice in what we do in life, and in more occasions than not, we are being driven by beliefs and behaviors and responses that have been programmed into us. Either we've inherited certain ideas and reactions, or we've adopted them, and then we kind of live out this automatic life in so many ways. So today we're going to explore the notion of choice and freedom. And good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Before we get started looking at choice, maybe the illusion of choice, let's just take a couple minutes to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, choice. It's so interesting how so much of our lives are run by a 5-year-old, the 5-year-old that we were, or the 3-year-old, or the 10-year-old that we were, where we made certain decisions about life. And then that kid ends up driving the bus for the rest of our lives. And what I'm referring to is traumas that we experience as kids, and as kids faced with survival concerns and considerations. When something happens as a child, we can make decisions like, I'm never going to this, that, or the other thing, or the world is, or people are, or I am. And that's one way that we kind of shape our destiny without even realizing it. And this is something that I work with folks a lot, is that child self that made a determination that then really shapes the balance of our lives from that point forward. And it's it's interesting how we adapt to certain patterns. So this is interesting. I was talking to a client yesterday about an experience that they had when they were a little kid. They There was not a lot of food in their family, and they had siblings that just picked on them all the time. And the one thing that was sacred for them, the one thing that was theirs, was their food and eggs. And they had a particular appreciation for sunny side up eggs. And then the eggs needed to be unbroken, kind of unsullied. And this was for them as a kid, as a little kid. This was something that was sacred. And the one of their siblings deliberately broke the yolk on these eggs, and it was experienced by this kid as such a deep, deep, deep violation that it broke them in that moment. And this relationship with the sacredness of unbroken egg yolks has carried into their adulthood. And the they if the egg yolks are broken, or if someone were to deliberately break the egg yolks on their eggs, they said that that would be the highest violation of trust. And that would warrant never communicating with that person again. And so in this instance, this person really has no choice. There's a child that is dictating a certain perception of life. And I'm saying this because it's kind of an unusual example. And I think that most of us have something similar to this kind of sensitivity and sensibility, where there's something that can trigger us and we can have a rather extreme reaction to whatever that stimulus was, that is based someplace else, that is from the past, that has a meaning that we've attributed to something that we don't even have a choice about. And in this case, this was a particular trauma, or an accumulation of traumas that resulted in this manifestation for this person. But we inherit so many of our ideas of what the world is and who we are, because we're told as we grow up. When we're little kids, we're inside a family system, or inside a social system of some sort, where we are indoctrinated. And it doesn't seem like indoctrination. It's just people sharing the way the world is, believing that their belief about the way the world is the way the world is, and passing that down from generation to generation. And I think that this is how we end up with intergenerational trauma in a lot, if not maybe all situations, is that we're communicating worldview from one generation to the next. And as children, we do not have the wherewithal to understand that the indoctrination we're receiving is just that, is a vantage point, not the truth, is a representation, not the singular sort of representation of the world or the way things are. My biggest thing is freedom, awakening and freedom. And I think I see those things as at least parallel, if not the same. That when we awaken, we are free. And what I mean by awaken is to be able to move beyond, to dissolve the programming and patterning and conditioning that we are subject to, that narrows and defines our experience of life and reality and our potential. It's only when we are able to dissolve these overlays, I call them, that we actually get down to a place of choice, of at least incrementally. I think that this kind of evolution is an incremental thing where little by little the stories that we have come to believe are the truth with a capital T kind of fade away, and we get to see beyond that. It is the classic story of the emperor has no clothes and consensus reality. So in that story, there was a tailor sort of person who convinced the emperor that they were creating clothing of the finest fabric, that it was gossamer like and visible only, I think it was visible only to people with merit. I could be making that up. But anyway, there was a little kid in the kingdom, and the little kid who hadn't had this conditioning looked at the emperor and said, "Oh my gosh, look, the emperor has no clothes." And the moral of the story, I guess, is, or the point is, the eyes of innocence. We're able to see and speak the truth. And I guess what we're talking about, to be able to get to choice, is to start recognizing how deeply patterned we are in so many ways, in every way, perhaps. And we can get glimpses of that patterning. When we do, we get to be able to work to clear that, to dissolve that. And when we do dissolve that, what happens is new possibilities arise that weren't even available from the other vantage point. So we were talking about vengeance the other day, and this paradigm of domination and control. And when we start to look at that and recognize the absurdity, for instance, of using violence and war to try to end violence and war, we can start to say, oh my gosh, there's what's wrong with this picture? How can we maybe there's something new to consider. And because we live lives without questioning in so many ways, without questioning the fundamentals that got us to where we are, we're kind of condemned to perpetuate those things. And we like to imagine that we have choice. But the thing about choice is that it may lead us into the unknown, the unfamiliar. If we're choosing to live beyond the programming, then we're choosing the less traveled path. And there may not be the same kinds of signposts, there may not be the same kind of security, because we're choosing when others are really just playing out the program. The idea of choice is to make the invisible visible. And what I mean by that is to be recognizing, it's like the fish recognizing the water that it's swimming in. It's sort of hard to do that because we're surrounded by it, because it's all encompassing. But when we can start identifying, for instance, identifying consensus reality, and that start to look at, well, what are the driving ideas behind certain social manifestations? what are the assumptions that allow for this kind of behavior or this kind of belief? When we start looking at the assumptions, to actually dissect the foundation of our pattern thinking and behavior, we can gain some inroads. And to recognize that without awareness of those assumptions, we don't really have choice. We're just making those assumptions, and we're living from that place of whatever the structure or foundation is that those assumptions provide us. And there's no freedom in that. We're essentially robots until we can start questioning those automatic assumptions and reactions and responses. And the idea here is that we can peel away some of these patterned behaviors to then expose more of our essence, more of what is authentically present for us. And it's very uncomfortable. I'm gonna say it may be simple, but not easy. It's very uncomfortable to be looking at ourselves and to recognize, oh my gosh, where did this come from? That's not even what I believe. That's not even consistent with my values, that all of a sudden, I'm having this response. What's up with that? I remember I used to have these thoughts going through my head that would just jar me, like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? That's not even mine. But, ideas that I had inherited from my parents, and they would go through my head, and I would be just jarred by the incongruity, because it's like, here, there's this voice in my head that's saying these things, but it's like, oh, that it was repugnant to me. I don't know if any of you have ever had fights with the voices in your head. And I'm not talking about voices telling me to do stuff, but just like commentary that was not reflective of my values or my commitments or my beliefs. And I guess it was being able to hear that commentary and to recognize it so that I could choose differently. I mean, just because there's this inner commentary doesn't mean that it's true or right either, right? And I'm presuming I'm not alone with this inner commentary. I understand that other people have something similar. um, but where does that commentary come from? Is it yours, or is it something that you have inherited? And is it something that you need to give credibility to? Is it something that you need to empower? Because so often that inner commentary that's been inherited. Thank you. Intuitive Tammy says, no, you're not alone there. Right. These crazy voices, it's like voices that say, oh my gosh, you stupid whatever, or it's rarely that those voices are like, oh, you did such a great job, you're wonderful. Usually the voices are uh more malicious, right? Like, what do you think you're doing? Who do you think you are? Etc., etc. And the question, I think that there's so much power when we learn to question those voices, to make the invisible. They're invisible as long as we let them chatter on without our awareness, because they're impacting us on all different levels. But when we can question them, when we can make them visible, then we actually can have some choice. And I remember I had taken the S training, later the forum. And one of the things that I remember from that was to be able to hear these voices and to just say, thanks for sharing, like, thank you very much. Okay, next. Like, just, we don't need to embody them. We can just allow them to float past those voices and conversations uh without letting them continue to program and condition us. And the first step, I think, is to hear those voices, to recognize the programs, to recognize our pattern behaviors. It's so interesting to me. Like, you can often tell that people are related by their patterns of speech, even the way that they use their voices and the different inflections. You can hear the similarities. We're even trained to speak. We are trained to speak in the context in which we grow up. And we tend to carry that through into our lives. So our gestures are often the same as our family, because that's what we're trained, how we're trained to express. When we're spoken to, that's what we learn speech to be. And recognizing this stuff with curiosity and compassion, not judgment. Curiosity is the antidote to judgment. But when we can be curious about this rather than making it a bad thing, it's a universal thing. We're all conditioned, we're all programmed. There's nothing wrong with us for being that way. That's just how it is. And we can awaken from it. We can grow beyond it. We can open up new potentials by becoming aware and exercising choice. So at an even deeper level, deepening and deeper level. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it is a delight and a privilege to have the opportunity to share these morning musings and just explore what it is to be human. So until next